This is the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast with your host, Kevin Murray.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast. On this episode, we have a guest that has become a go-to fantasy resource for IDP analysis, rankings, and advice. You can find him at Fantasy and Frames. It's Nate Marcum. Welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Man, you know it's always a pleasure to join you. We don't get enough time to chit-chat throughout the course of the season or throughout the course of the year, so I'm going to cherish every minute we have here.
It's gonna be fun. I can say that you and your wife Carrie are two of the people that I love to see the most at the expo. You bring great energy. She obviously is infectious and really helps to bring good energy into the room. And so it's always nice to see your smiling faces. And I'm happy to have you on here, my man.
Yeah, she actually said the same thing to me before she left for work. She said she's envious. She said to say hello, and she looks forward to seeing you hopefully in about whatever that is. 8 months, 9 months from now.
Can't come soon enough. Expo is always a fun time. So looking forward to that. Let's dive into your backstory a little bit. Let the listeners and viewers get to know you a bit better. Where now you basically you grew up in a small town in Illinois, but a lot closer to St. Louis than Chicago, right?
Correct. Yeah, we're about an hour and 15 away, just across the river in a town called Centralia. It is it's a basketball hotbed, not necessarily a football, but going into the season, the most wins of any high school basketball team in the country.
Wow, that's impressive. That's impressive. So yeah. I love it. So let's talk to me about your sports fandom growing up. What was that like? When did that passion really start for you?
So really early. My family's a family of sports family from my grandma. So my grandpa played baseball for the Cubs back in, 70 years ago or whatever it was. Didn't play long, but he did get his cup of coffee, as they say. And he was a football player for University of Illinois. And so it started before him even. His father played baseball. And then football gradually became a passion, but it was really more baseball, basketball starting off. My grandma, I can remember back in the 90s going to my grandma's house and sitting with her, and she's fortunately still with us right now. And she is a huge Bulls fan, and we would watch the Bulls games, and I would talk, and I would say something about the game, and she'd shush me. No, don't talk. We're here to watch the game. So she wasn't the rah chat, chit chat during the game, but her passion for that, and then that trickled down to my parents, and yeah, it's been just pretty much inundated into my life since I can remember.
That's awesome. So you obviously in Illinois, but your major portion of your fandom is St. Louis. Like, how does that work?
Yeah, it's just proximity. It's the Bears didn't really have too much of a place. The Cubs, because of our proximity to St. Louis, were our rival, and half of the town. I mean, granted, it was a larger town growing up, but half of them, maybe not, 40% were Cubs fans because they could, they won the Illinois pride, I guess, if that's what it was. Yeah. But it's primarily Cardinals. St. Louis being so close was probably the key motivator, plus having tickets to the games and availability. When you go to the game, you build a passion for it. And I really wasn't a St. Louis Cardinals football fan as much because I, at a young age, wasn't involved in the NFL as a team basis, more of a player. I enjoyed the players more than the game. But then they left, obviously went to Arizona, and then we had no team. Then the Rams came in, and at that point it was just, they were like, I don't know, they were an adopted family and not quite the same.
And you probably already had your, I guess, where did the Kansas City Chiefs come in? Like, did you find them early on, and then the Rams came, and it wasn't like there wasn't room for two teams?
What's ironic? It was really like Tecmo Bowl and proximity, Christian Okoye, et cetera. And so the Chiefs were local, and we had some friends. There you go. I got I had the jersey right there and right over there. He of all things, he actually sent Carrie and I congratulations on our wedding through Twitter, because I had on the Christian Okoye jersey in one of our pictures. She's tackling me, and tagged him, and then he posted. So stand-up guy, by the way. But yeah, it was him. Tecmo Bowl for the Chiefs, just in general. And I don't get me wrong, I was a Rams fan when they were here because it's nice to have a football team close, and you're gonna
Yeah.
root for them. But yeah, it's the Chiefs die hard probably didn't start till a little bit later when I got past the individual side of football, and I wanted to have a team to say let's just strap onto this team and ride. Then the Rams came here, and it was kind of I had an AFC and an NFC team, and it was like, you're not supposed to have two teams. I get it, but Kevin, you can have 25 teams for all I care. I don't really. They will disagree, and I will disagree in some regards, but to have both, and I didn't have to have a worry about them battling to see who I liked more, because they didn't really, the Super Bowl was never an option at the same time between the two.
Sure. No, I can relate. I mean, I grew up in Seattle. Sports scene was just, I mean, it's kind of all over the place. And so I definitely learned early to love players across the country. And so, a guy like Barry Sanders, he
Yeah.
was everything to me growing up. He made every Thanksgiving, the best day of the year, because I got to actually watch him play. So seeing Detroit's run in the playoffs, I'm all on that. Obviously, you got a lot on the line with the Chiefs going right now. I did wear some of this to make you feel comfortable here.
Thank you.
But yeah, obviously it's an exciting time of the year. So when did you first discover fantasy sports?
Late 90s, early 2000. I think 99 2000 was the first year I drafted a team, and that was, I believe it, man. And I was going to pull it up to have it ready, but I'm glad I don't, because when you hear some of the picks, but I think the first pick I had was Marshall Faulk, which was fine.
Nice.
But I'm pretty sure that I had a defense or a kicker within the first like 7-8 rounds. And maybe that goes to the defensive side of starting off early. But needless to say, that has evolved. But yeah, it was really the late 90s, my junior year in college is when I found it. And yet my friends were still a little far behind. I didn't have a local group of friends for fantasy until probably 4 years later.
Okay. Was your first league online, or was it paper?
It was the first football league was online on Yahoo.
Yeah, right at that time where Yahoo kind of broke through.
Yep.
And it makes sense. A lot of people kind of found it at that time, but then, as a lot of people didn't find the game of fantasy football until much later. So you go back quite a ways, which is awesome. Do you remember consuming content like way back in the day? People that that you love to follow along when it comes to fantasy content?
Yeah, and a lot of that stems, with the with Yahoo and the guys over at Yahoo Sports, Andy and Brandon and Brad, etc. Those guys really kind of they were the ones that it's the only place I really consumed content from. And we didn't have, I mean, think about it now versus then. It's crazy to think that you could type in fantasy football in 1999, 2000, and you would have gotten what? Maybe I'm sure it's not 7 pages on Google, but Google wasn't even Google. You didn't really say Google. What did we call it then? What did we do?
I mean, it was just like whatever, whether it was like Internet Explorer or whatever predated that. Like, it was just a search, I guess.
Yeah, you couldn't even say, like, in 2000, if I said, Kevin, hey, let's Google fantasy football for me, you would have looked at me.
Yeah.
None of those words would have computed. And but those guys at Yahoo were great. And then as it went along, the other area that the content providers that I just read constantly was the guys over at Rasball for initially for baseball, because I do a lot of fantasy baseball as well, and then they got into football, and so I want to give them their due. They really created the perfect environment for me in that combination of humor and content, which is the way that the majority of people want their information to be taken in right now. Is you have to provide some, like you do. You bring exactly what people are looking for: the enjoyment, the excitement, humor, and good information.
Hey, that's a good combination of things for sure. No, I can relate to that. When it comes to like that, Yahoo as well.
Mhm.
Like I started my first leagues, as a commissioner, like on Yahoo. And yeah, it was Brandon and Andy and Brad and those guys that would pop up on your little, on your screen or your computer screen and give you those
Yeah.
little breakdowns. And yeah, big time impact from those guys in my world. It wasn't until later that I discovered this, the whole world of all the other content creators out there. So how about IDP? When did you first get turned on to that?
Surprisingly, 3 years ago.
Nice.
I understood what it was. I
Yeah.
had played in a league where you had one or two defensive players. It never grabbed a hold. I never gravitated towards it. But Jorge Edwards over at Fantasy and Frames. When I joined with those guys, the idea, we were starting a baseball portion of Fantasy and Frames. That's what started that whole thing, really. And so he said, "What do you think about covering IDP?" I said, "I'll do whatever you need, man. I mean, I can figure it out. How hard can it be?" And then I found out that you know what I loved the most about it was not knowing it. And it was like people that like learning things in general.
Yeah.
It's not that I couldn't learn the offensive side. I'm always learning. Every day there's something we can learn. If not, it's ridiculous to think. But the IDP side was so new to me that I had to try to find a way to, number one, know the players, which was a challenge, but that's just time invested, and then learn how to formulate a strategy and take that information and correlate it into a story that people can absorb and understand and want to listen to, not just tackles plus this equal this and A and B is C, but more so paint the picture. And since then, I mean, I gotta admit, in 3 years, I've grown a new passion for it that I didn't think I have. And yet I do get pigeonholed sometimes, which is not, I mean, think that I'm primarily IDP, and shockingly, I'm more offense than I am IDP, but it's such a good niche to have just a little bit of an edge on. And I'm happy to do so.
That's awesome. So with the game of fantasy, like what is it that you love the most about playing the game, the experience?
I love football in general, and to be able to have one other area, and we don't have sports betting. Not that if we had sports betting in Missouri, that I would just quit fantasy and just focus on that. But I like having that. It's probably the competitive edge in me, or that adrenaline type feel that I want something else out of it. And don't get me wrong, the camaraderie is more than anything else. But that's the easy answer because it's the truth. It's going a little bit further is just adding another level of that onion of awesome that football is.
Yeah, the camaraderie, and then obviously that competition that kind of fuels the rivalries. I
Yes.
get it. I mean, I definitely get where you're coming from. Do you have a league like that is your home league, like primary league that you think of, or do you just play in a ton of different leagues?
I do. I have two primary leagues. We're in year 2022 right now, and then I have another one. So that's a redraft. It's a 3-person keeper we've had since the beginning. We have mostly 10 or maybe 9 of the 12 that started still with.
Nice.
So we have lost 2 to just being out of it, and 1 to an untimely death. But it's that's been the best part about the league, is that keeping everybody together. I think that's that better than anybody. It's a challenge. It's by far the most challenging thing because life happens. But that one, and then I have an auction one that we've done for probably close to 20 years. And then yes, there's so many other ones that we have across the board from industry along that it gets a little overwhelming.
So is that home league? Are you guys all kind of in the same area? Do you guys do live drafts and stuff?
We the last 3 drafts have not been live, and I have petitioned for the live portion. So it's 60-40. I do get maybe 60% of the guys over here. Even if it's online, we have the computers up and we can kind of chit chat. It has changed. It's not as exciting as it once was from the draft perspective, but we all live here in St. Louis, and we're all capable of getting together. But really, COVID kind of squashed that, and then people's lives started to get in the way just a little bit.
Yeah, and I think with long-standing leagues like that, I mean, obviously, to me, live drafts are so important. Like, bring people together, get people excited for a league. When you got a league that's 20 years plus, I mean, you guys have those connections, so it's not as important. Obviously, it's always a league's always better when you're getting together. But But just to have, a league that's 20 years in the making, that's impressive. I love to see that. Do you guys do anything fun like last place punishments or anything like that?
We used to really more. It wasn't as fun as some of the other ones that are out there where they make people go sit in IHOP for 24 hours or whatever the case. There was one league, not part of this home league per se, but it was a separate league that I was in with some people from my home league. But it was like there were 3 different leagues kind of going on at one time, and the first year separated all 12 teams out, and it was like a relegation, kind of like soccer, where the last 3 teams have to drop down, and the prize pool was paid out that the entry fee was the same across all 36 teams. Each person paid 100, but the percentage of the winnings was weighted like 45, 25, and like 15 or whatever it is.
That's cool.
Top, second, and third. And so if you make your way to the third, and we couldn't break up the money, or they didn't start breaking up the money from first, second, and third tiering of leagues until later, because it wouldn't be fair if by luck of the draw you got in the third tier. But the first year was like the top 3 teams in each league, or top 4, I guess, went to the first tier, the middle went to the second, and then the bottom went to the third, and then half the league in the second, if that makes sense without writing it all down. But it was almost a relegation. I wish that league was still going strong, because I think it's a fun way to do it. And hey, maybe you never know. Maybe I can get one started. I know enough people, I would think, that are degenerates like us that would play probably.
That's a really cool concept. I love it. Obviously, the longer you're in that third league, you might get a little more discouraged, and how long it stays with everybody fired up might be tricky. But I love the concept. That's really cool. Do you have what you consider your biggest rivalry in fantasy, whether it's one of those home leagues or an industry colleague that you like? You just get the most joy beating, or it obviously hurts the most when you lose.
Yeah, I mean, it's always going to be, not always going to be a home league, but I think that after 20 years, we have feuded. My buddy Rich he's just good. He knows what he's doing. And you know what? I'll damn him. He did the one thing. He started off and he realizes that like I took it a little bit more seriously, and he got it to where people didn't want to make trades with me. And he would make fun and he would joke around, and it was just a little piece of a jab, but it held true. And he would tell people, like, if we made a trade, you got Marcum on that one. And people would remember that. And then I'm in sales, and so he would always just kind of, you want to get raked over the coals by this snake oil salesman? And nobody would trade. So for 4 years, I never could get trades done. And it made the challenge not against him as like a rival in terms of I had any animosity, but it made my experience a lot more challenging to get trades done and to win that league.
Rich, man, I tell you, that's
Rich
good.
man.
I mean, because some people might say, "Oh, that's collusion." Some people might say that is an incredible strategy to take down the top. I love it. I love it. So you basically you're fired up about fantasy. You love fantasy. How did you get connected with Jorge? Like, when did you decide to dive in to create content? You said it's been a few years now. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, the again, Razball. Those guys have a couple different leagues. They have the Raz Bowl and the Raz Slam, which are overall competitions. And I was in the Raz Bowl, made it to the finals, so the final 10. And one of the guys who I was going against, Aaron Pagliaro, who was at the time riding with Jorge, had just reached out and said, "Hey, I see that shows you that you're a fan. Great job this year. Are you thinking about riding or anything to that extent?" And I said, I don't know. I was like, I don't really give too much interest in doing that side of it. I just enjoy playing. He's like, "Well, if you ever think about it, let me know." Well, I've always had interest. I think everybody, when at the age of, I was almost 40 at that point, I didn't have the time to start fresh in my mind and say, what impact can I make in a saturated field? But I would love just to jump in and have more. This stuff was becoming more popular, podcasts and conversations online and streams, etc. And I enjoyed that much more than the writing aspect. But he said, give it a shot. Jumped on with Jorge, talked with those guys, just absolutely fell in love with the group of people that they are. And it was a small group. It was only really 3 or 4 of us at the time. And we were going to start doing baseball for Fantasy and Frames. And we did. And we found a little niche, Kevin. We started covering relief pitching only. Aaron and I did. And then we made connections through that. And then we just didn't have the bandwidth for baseball. And so then the football side, with Jorge, grew a little bit. And then went to the expo, and then it grew a little bit more. And I owe everything to Jorge as far as being able to be on here with you, et cetera. So yeah, it was really just their family, like close knit kind of. It's not the deadline's in 2 hours. What's wrong with you? Yeah. But they're, you try to support each other. So you stick to those deadlines and things of that nature.
Yeah, it's an incredible team. Obviously, it's grown. Talk to me about what you witnessed over the last few years. The growth has been incredible. Just adding more and more great people to the mix. And talk to me a little bit about what Fantasy Frames is all about. Like what resources people can find there.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, it's when I was there. So it was Aaron, myself, Ken, Jorge, and like 2 other guys that contributed briefly here and there. Aaron then got an opportunity with Fantasy Pros, wanted to take on that and see where that was going to take them. And so then it was really just kind of Jorge, myself, and a few others. Well, then the expo happened, and I ran into Tyler Heil, and he was just, freelance, wasn't really anything, and had a great conversation with him as far as I can tell. It was the Friday night experience. So I'm sure the conversation was it was very entertaining to anybody else. How he remembered anything was beyond me, but it grew from that. And then his dream, Jorge's passion, and his, I guess, clairvoyance of seeing that it could grow into the IDP side and be in both the resource for IDP and redraft pretty much exclusively. Then Dynasty started to become more popular within our scope. We were finding ourselves being more and more drawn to it. Then the idea of, the best ball. And so Keith Fleming came on, and now we have, I think it's close to 20 people from Dynasty to IDP to redraft. Best ball. We have the college game now starting this year. So it's grown from what I would consider, 4 or 5 guys that got together, and we had a great website that Jorge has just put everything into. And I think it looks like it's been a fine, world machine for years, much more than a 2 to 3 year process of really getting as expanded as it's been.
Yeah, it's been fun to witness for sure, and you've done a great job, like with some of those Fantasy Pros rankings and whatnot. Like, talk to me about that, like your experience with finishing, near the top there. You crushed the tight end rankings this last year. That's the word on the street. So talk to me about those accomplishments and what you've experienced with that.
It was just another little layer of competition, right? I mean, that's what it comes down to, and it is something that I found that you can gain a little bit of clout from if you really want to. I've never went in with the intention of saying, look at me. And in fact, actually, you'll see it when anybody mentions it. I don't even want to acknowledge it and continue. I'm not the person to necessarily build myself up when it comes to that, but I do respect that it's an accomplishment in regards, even if it's just because for 17 weeks I did something that many don't want to do, which is put in your rankings. And the consistency each year for 4 years, especially considering IDP is just in my infancy. I mean, not even 10% of my life I've looked at IDP. And so to be top 10 for each year that I've done it, I'm proud of. I know that it's not as wide and expansive as, say, like the overall, which those guys who finished first and top 5 and top 10 in the overall week to week, that's by far much more challenging. But yeah, the tight end side was that was a new one, a little bit of a shocker, and I have no rhyme or reason. I just, maybe once I started doing well in tight ends, I also focused a little bit more attention and saying, all right, I'm going to make sure that I don't forget to take out X, Y, and Z player when they're not playing this week, or make sure that I dive a little bit deeper and find that one guy that might have a better opportunity and move them up a little bit. Cause it is a game also, as much as it's Well, Kevin, no, I think that he's going to outscore him. It's how much of a risk do I want to take? Do I really want to bring Tony Pollard to RB25 because I think that going against Tampa or whoever it would be is a bad matchup? No, but those extra 6 spots down can separate enough, especially over time.
Yeah, I can see why, it is. I can see where you describe it as a game. You want to kind of, you take chances, right? See how
Yeah.
it all turns out. Obviously, this year you believed in the rookie tight ends. I would imagine with having success in the tight end, that kind of broke a belief prior to now,
Oh,
where
yeah.
stay away from those rookie tight ends. So I like that. It's been fun. It's been a good year on the rookie tight end front. When it comes to like IDP though, are there certain resources that you dove into to kind of get you inspired, or certain people out there in the community that you look to gain some more strategy advice and analysis?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the one area I'll say I think the fantasy landscape is chock full of wonderful people that will give any amount of time to help someone out, contrary to what really Twitter can be. We see the negatives like with everything in life. There
Sure.
are shining stars and good people predominantly. But unfortunately, if you have a bowl full of grapes and there's a turd in there, guess what people are going to remember? The turd, not the
Yeah,
grapes,
for
right?
sure.
And so unfortunately, you people focus on that, but I like to focus on those guys that really have and the IDP side. I think it's a niche. So maybe it's not as widespread. So you feel like people are more supportive because you don't have as many people to ask and look towards. But Gary Davenport has been in fantasy landscape for 20, he's the godfather of IDP, and he's
Yeah.
become you know a friend more so than just a resource. But he was a resource that I used extensively. Mike Wohlert was a guy who really first came on with our show. He was over at 4for4, and his knowledge and his acceptance into it was one that I felt like, all right, so here's a person who's done this. These two guys been doing it forever as far as what I know. But again, I never researched anything. I didn't look out to find IDP guys. Jorge is the most influential as far as being supportive and being my best quote unquote cheerleader for my success or for our success. And so I did follow, I looked at his, but PFF has been the best resource for information as far as I'm concerned. It lets you dig a little bit deeper into the weeds of how pressure rates and win percentage, et cetera, can turn into what that player evolution is. And now the reach is, my gosh, I mean, there's 20 to 30 of us that from the Kings Classic now IDP to
Yeah.
outside. I get the privilege of talking with those guys and being a peer instead of just a content absorber.
Sure, sure. And you mentioned a lot of great people and the Kings Classic. Obviously, that kind of leads into the community as a whole. What's your experience been like going to the expo, just from on a personal level, just meeting people and connecting with people?
It's been, I mean, I think it's one of the highlights of my year every year. If not the highlight to look forward to, because there's many of highlights that we don't know are going to happen. I mean, sentinel events can happen every day, and I don't ever want to take away from the joy that those things can bring, from birthdays to anniversaries to just celebrations in general. But an opportunity for us to all get together, and it is, and people just assume it's great because they're like, I mean, really, you talk football 3 to 4 days a week. Why do you want to go and talk more football? And the concept that, or the crazy rationale is that we don't really talk football. That's the
That's
one
what I was
thing
gonna
that
say.
would really not even. It's like the football conversation. It's funny is when I watch people that are there for the first time, they come up and you'll see them having conversations with people that have been going for years. And once the conversation gets too deep into football, you see the people like all of us that have been there kind of drift away from that. It's like, I'll talk football, but I want to catch up on Kevin. I want to see what you've been up to other than outside of, following each other on Twitter and how family and life and everything else is. So it's been the best, like, I think, gathering of people to become friends. And if you remember, when was your first year?
It was 2021. So
Okay.
the last 3, right? I didn't go to that first one in 19 when it was very small, but I went
Me
after that.
Gotcha. So our experiences started from the same time.
Yeah.
And I remember after the expo from 21, it was everybody was best friends. Every person that was there, and it was mostly content creators, and there was a few fans here and there. And then, the sourness started to rear its ugly head afterwards. And I thought, well, that's not the norm. And that's what I found, is that each year has gotten better and better. People have become closer and closer. And we've made so many friends outside of St. Louis that we look forward to traveling and visiting. And some of the guys from Fantasy and Frames, that's how we've grown our brand. It's been the best experience in my fantasy football, whatever you call this,
Yeah.
hobby,
Journey,
journey. Yeah, journey.
Sure.
That's much better. Yeah, for sure.
No, I totally agree. I mean, obviously, it's such a special event. Like, I can't imagine the community right now if there wasn't an expo. Like
Mhm.
how far it's put people ahead and relationships ahead. So many relationships professionally, personally that have been created because of the expo. It's amazing. Highly recommend anybody who's interested to just make sure you go, because it's the most welcoming group of people. And even if you go solo, you're not alone, right? Immediately you'll get that vibe for sure.
Yeah, I mean, if you're solo and you see Kevin or myself, 100% come up and talk, and I'll talk to you as long as you want. I could, as long as until you get sick of me, most likely is when you'll probably leave. So
I love it.
challenge it.
That's awesome. Let's dive into some rapid fire questions. I'll just throw out some questions. You just let me know what first comes to mind.
Got it.
What do you enjoy most about what you're doing in the industry right now?
Like I said, the camaraderie. I think getting to know everybody on a personal level, more so than just a football level, and having a wider range of friends as life happens. Your group of friends sometimes dwindle. This has kept it expansive.
For sure. And how about what's been the biggest difficult or most difficult challenge for you so far?
The balance from full-time job and doing this, wanting to give an even, got to take care of my family and make a, experience from my full-time job. But
Yeah.
I also enjoy this journey so much more that I want to do this. So it's trying to find out, who am I going to neglect? And that's essentially the biggest struggle that I think many of us probably have.
Yeah, I think that's a very common thing. Everyone has a passion for this, this industry and in the game and the people in the community. And everybody wants to do more, I think. So that is a common one for sure. Can you name a person in the industry that you'd love to just watch a game with, just to get their insight and perspective on the game of football?
Yeah, I enjoy talking football. Of all the people, Jim Coventry is one of my favorite people at the expo and just in general. And him and I share just a common thread of loving the game of football and wanting to watch it from the X's and O's more so. And so I've never really got a chance to sit down and watch a game with him. We've talked enough football, but Jim would be great. And he's a friend too. So that even makes it better.
Yeah, that'd be an enjoyable time for sure. What's your all-time favorite defensive player? Like, just all time?
Derek Thomas.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
thought you would say that. I mean, he was one of my favorites growing up for sure. I didn't like when he sacked Dave Craig like 7 times
I
or
don't
whatnot,
blame you.
but he was remarkable, and that was obviously a very sad, sad passing for sure.
Horrible.
How about on the IDP front? Like, is there a player that like stands out to you that is like the king, like your favorite IDP player?
Oh man, that's by far more challenging because there's such different different positions that I want. Like, it's easy to root for the heavy tackle linebackers and want to just say, oh, Foye Oluokun, he's from St. Louis, great IDP aspect. But watching Myles Garrett is the one for me that I think he's the best defensive lineman in football. I know TJ Watt deserves that accolade just as much, but Garrett's the one that I really, if I can have him on every team, I do, because there's that good blend of, I know he's going to be productive. I think, the most fun to watch and dominating player on the field at any given time.
Nice. I wanted you to say Bobby Wagner for some reason, but I just
Trust me, if you said linebacker of who's my favorite IDP linebacker of the last 3, 4, 5 years, I think Bobby Wagner would have had to been my answer. He's as consistent, as they come, and I'm so glad that he is back and whatnot, and hopefully him and Jordan Brooks. Hopefully Jordan Brooks is. I don't know what to expect out of Jordan Brooks. Let's put it that way.
Wild card. But Bobby, I mean, to me,
Yes.
Bobby, like, he's just the ultimate, all-time player in my book, like from a Seattle sports area. It's like, and then the neglect that he's kind of had nationally a little bit, when he was, going up with like Kuechly, everyone loved Kuechly. And I'm like,
Yep.
hey, Bobby's pretty darn good. And, he's had twice as long his career, but that's just, that's just my own bias with Bobby. Now, why should people that play fantasy football dive into IDP?
If you want to become a better player overall and understand why and how your offensive players, besides the research, because you're going to read that and you're going to see the same thing is now people are diving even further, and we see it all the time now, more and more so. This wide receiver is going to do well. Brandon Ayuk is going to have a great game against Detroit because Detroit plays man 6th most time in the NFL, and he has a 75% completion percentage and a QB rating of 117 when he's thrown against man. If you follow the IDP side, then it goes even a step further, and you're like, yeah, it's actually even better because Melifonwu, who's been playing more in the box, he's a liability in coverage, and Ayuk runs these routes where you don't have the coverage in the secondary from the safety. So I think you understand a little bit more of the game. It's intimidating. I get it, but my knowledge of the offensive side to understand. One example, our friend Keith Fleming, who does our best ball DraftKings and everything. We were doing our morning show on Sunday, and he was talking about Rachaad White against his Falcons and how the Falcons were so stout against the run that he's fading Rachaad White. And I told him that day, I said, the one thing I would be careful of is that without David Onyemata and without Nate Landman, I said, those are the two best run stopping players they have on their team, and both are out this week. And by replacement, you've got X, Y, and Z. I think maybe this could be the week that Rachaad White, and he switched and pivoted his DFS lineups out, put in Rachaad White, and won like $4,000. Now, did I get any of that money, Keith? No, I haven't got it yet, but it was it wasn't a guarantee, but it was two little pieces to that puzzle that you can connect that makes a rational story.
If that's not like as good of an argument as you can get when it comes to being a little more interested in IDP and learning, everything that's going on in the field, I don't know what is. That was perfect. I love it. Now, what are some of your favorite hobbies and activities outside of sports?
I play golf. Not as much as I used to. I do enjoy playing golf. It's a game that you need to play a lot more you get more frustrated when you play more, but then you get less frustrated because you get a little bit better and you have less frustrating shots. But I do enjoy that. I'm a bit of a, I do like playing. 45 years old, but I'll still play some Madden and play some games like that. And we're travelers. I really enjoy traveling now. If that's a hobby, I guess it's an expensive hobby, but Carrie and I both really enjoy finding just little spots. We'll do the Southwest Airlines has their $39 getaway plan, and we'll pick a name out of a hat and see where it takes us. And sometimes we do it, sometimes we don't, because no offense to Omaha, it's not exactly a weekend we want to go, but Seattle is probably top 3 or 4 place on our list. So now where are you in proximity to Seattle?
Just like 30 minutes south. So
perfect. So what I heard is that Carrie and I have a place to stay when we come to Seattle. So excellent. All right.
Perfect. Like 20 minutes from the airport. So yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, definitely.
Even better.
Definitely, you're more than welcome to come, and I will host you for sure.
Fantastic.
How about like a favorite TV show? You got anything that like an all-time favorite TV show that you have?
Yeah, I love It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. That's one of my favorites for sure. Chappelle's Show is probably my most quotable TV show that I love. It's Are you fans of either of those two or both of those?
So yeah, Chappelle's great, but it's Always Sunny. I've never seen it, and for some reason, like it's just completely missed. But I've heard the recommendation so much lately that I just told my wife just the other day, like we need to we need to watch this show because you know I've seen so many memes over the years, and you know
Exactly.
I feel like I know the show without even really being aware of it.
Yep.
But yeah, it's on the list, very high on the list. In fact, I think I got a note deal on my phone that actually has that as the top thing to get into. So I'm all for it. Um, so how much has the support of your wife, meant to you the past few years?
uh, Tremendous. Probably the most supportive of anything. Because if I didn't have her backing, I wouldn't do it because I know that I would neglect something from work life, family balance. That if it is hobby and if it is my real job and family, I would quit. I would quit doing fantasy football content if it meant I was going to jeopardize either of those two. But knowing that I have support on both sides and support the fact that she said, "Hey, you can do all three." In fact, actually, you probably could even do a little bit more for some of the fantasy content because I have taken a lot of time off from it. But as with anything, the more acclimated you become, the easier. Like if it took me 20 minutes to research two things before, knowing how to find those things, now it's only 10 minutes. So there's 10 additional minutes I can dedicate to maybe family or to my real job. So it's an allocation of time that
Sure.
without her support becomes a lot more challenging.
That's awesome. So at this time, like, what are you most grateful for?
I mean, that ability, that grounding sense of knowing that at work, I'm I'm able to do this I can do this at work technically. Nobody's at work listening, but they know that. They know that as long as my job and my job in sales is kind of a never a 9 to 5, but I have that ability as to fluctuate both. So I'm just grateful that I I can do that and I don't have to choose because choosing between passion and, real work, unfortunately, as much as I love it sometimes, you don't want to neglect anybody.
For sure, for sure. Now back to entertainment. Like, do you have an all-time favorite movie?
So I would say I got to give the credit to the movie Major League, just because I've watched it
What's
more
happening?
times. Oh, look at that,
Look at
Rick.
that.
That is my.
Yeah.
We could start it right now. I could quote everything. When we went to Canton the first time, we went to Cleveland, and you want to talk about irritating Carrie? Holy hell! I started singing Cuyahoga River, burn
Yeah.
on, and I'm
Of
going
course.
past things, and I'm like, whoa, look at that! I was like, whoa, and that's where. And granted, that was 30 years ago, so none of the stuff's actually there, but I had an idea that it's pretty close to certain things, and it's great. Current, I would say I got to give credit to Step Brothers and the other guys. Those are two of my. The other guys is our most quotable on Fantasy and Frames. That's kind of Jorge and I's thing that we've been doing for years. And I like comedies for sure.
Yeah. No, I love it. No, I mean, Major League. I mean, that's always been my favorite, especially on the comedy side of sports. Like, there's some great sports movies out there, but Major League. I mean, I've watched it a million times. So
Right.
that's a special one. That's a great answer. How about music? Is there a favorite like musician or performer?
That we have an eclectic taste of music. To say I have a favorite is challenging. To say that if I could list, when we just went to Los Angeles this past week for the Chargers game, Trophy Smack.
Yeah.
I won that contest through them, and we went and saw the Eagles at the Forum. So the Eagles are always definitely high on my list. I'd never seen them before. Would love to have seen Queen. They're up there for sure. But in a given weekend, we went to two concerts, one Friday, one Saturday night, and Friday night's concert was Eric Church and Saturday night's concert was Snoop Dogg, Too Short, and like Busta Rhymes. No, it wasn't Busta
Nice.
Rhymes, but we've seen, so in any given weekend, I like it all, and so to say one is probably unfair to any of the others.
That's awesome. Now, how was that experience going to LA and talk to me about that and the Trophy Smack deal?
It was great. Those guys, and we all love those guys there and girls. I'm sorry. Kelly's the one that set up the majority of everything. So Kelly Singh, when I say guys, know that I meant just the uniformity of everybody there. I love you all. And the trip was wonderful. It was, they paid for the airfare and the hotel, and we got to go to SoFi for the Chargers Chiefs. Wish the Chiefs would have been playing everybody, would have been nice, but to have the luxury of no stress and just watching a game and relaxing, that was something different too. I mean, you can see Chris Jones get his million on that sack, which was fun experience. The stadium is, oh my gosh, beautiful. It is so nice, and it makes me so mad that it's so nice because Stan Kroenke is the worst human being. Mostly the leaving St. Louis, but it's not even that the Rams. Not like I was some diehard Rams fan and leaving tore my gut out, but the way they left. To be involved and to hear the people that, knowing some of the architecture firms and some of the other people involved in the logistics of, like, essentially he said, if you do A, B, and C, we can move to D. So they did A, B, and C basically twice at the cost of all these. There was never going to be a D, and they knew that, and all the other owners knew that. And so, I did my little Rick James, put my dirty shoes on his couch in his office. Which they weren't dirty. They were unfortunately brand new, but the experience was great. We, like I said, we added the Eagles concert. We did a day at Disney. It was wonderful. So Trophy awesome. Smack, I'll definitely support them and tell everybody to check it out. I see your trophies and your belts in the background. So of course,
love me some Trophy Smack for sure. And I, it's great that you had a good time despite being in Kroenke's house, because I can relate. My Seattle Sonics getting stolen like that.
Oh yeah.
Not good memory, not a good experience. So I hate when teams leave, but you have your Chiefs. So speaking of the Chiefs, where are you at with the whole Taylor Swift hype and all that surrounds the organization right now?
I have mixed feelings. I do not have any negative feelings in terms of her and Travis and and them showing her in the crowd. It's unfair that she gets as much, and why it makes people as pissed off as they get for showing that is beyond me. I have no clue why that's even a thing, but I believe that having a target on your back like Kansas City does, all it does is makes the opposing, fans that weren't really ready to not even jump on the bandwagon, but support now are just even more. There's more animosity and more hate, and I don't need it. I don't care. I don't, I had nothing to do with it. So I don't need you to tell me exactly why Taylor Swift is bad for the Chiefs and this and that. And hey, if we win the Super Bowl again and she's in the crowd, there'll just be more Kansas City jersey sales. There'll be more tickets, which means hopefully not more salary cap, but more opportunity for teams and players to maybe want to come play there and take a little bit less. Just better team environment for sure.
For sure. Now, obviously, it probably coincides with the success that the Chiefs have had. I mean, you go from a team where everyone's excited, happy for, to you kind of turned into the Yankees a little bit, right? Like the success doesn't help the situation, but no, I think it's silly the way people react, and it's goofy, but I think it's fun. In fact, I think the Chiefs getting to the Super Bowl, having more excitement, hype around the whole situation for a couple weeks would be a lot of fun from my perspective. I'm all for, let's go Detroit, let's go Kansas City, and see what happens.
Hey, I would love that. That looks like we have similar opinions, at least hopes. That's probably the best word to use.
Yeah, in the end, as long as the Niners lose, like, I'm good with that.
Exactly.
So if Niners do get past Detroit, I need someone to take care of them, because I can't handle more Niner fandom. Seattle and San Francisco. I mean, I think we beat them like 17 out of 20 times, over the past handful of years until their recent run. And I think they forgot about that, or they're just really bitter because they get pretty hostile. So hopefully Niners go down. It's obviously been a fun season.
Mm-hmm.
What is your prediction for the Super Bowl? Who's it going to be?
I do think. I mean, I would love to give Detroit the nod, and what I want to say You didn't ask me what my heart wants. You said my prediction, which unfortunately comes from my gut and my brain, is that I could very easily see the San Francisco Baltimore Super Bowl. And I'll say the one reason I would even hedge my bet, like Kansas City, I never want to, I wouldn't put any money on it because I'll never bet against Kansas City, not just from fandom, but because when you've been in this situation every time of your career, basically for Mahomes and, 6 times in a row now for the Chiefs, you're not going to be shocked. This is needless to say. I think we all know Baltimore doesn't have the longest Lamar Jackson exclusively playoff history success.
Yeah.
So it's not a new experience, but there's one thing to pay attention to, and that's Joe Tooney, who, if he's out, and that's the interior offensive lineman for the Chiefs, probably one of the best in the league. If he doesn't play because that pectoral muscle, players like Justin Matabuki and that pass rush from Baltimore is going to be a serious threat. And that's the biggest threat that I think could stop Kansas City from there. So I think that if you said, Nate, you have to put a mortgage on your prediction, I think the safe money would say Baltimore and San Francisco. But if you said, hey, what do you want to see happen? I want to see Detroit and KC.
I love that some of your IDP stuff dives right, defensive minded stuff comes right into that prediction. See, next level IDP stuff. Let's not pigeonhole you to just IDP. You know more about football than just that, but I can tell you got a knack for it. So that's exciting. Obviously, we got an off season coming. This playoffs is a ton of fun. What's your off season look like? Like, how do you attack the off season from a content perspective, or from different events along the way? Like, what excites you the most?
I mean, I love the off season because it's broken down into chapters.
Yeah.
The Super Bowl chapter, and then the draft and pre-draft and combine, and then to the draft, and then we work in with free agency in there. So it's it's a self-perpetuating cycle of excitement, which is why the NFL is the best ran sport in the Americas right now, is because, or North America, I guess, or United States. Sorry, I don't know. We're playing in so many different countries now when we have different games
For sure.
everywhere.
I'm with you.
I don't know how to say it exactly, but yeah, it is by far the best to keep along because there's always something. There's no dead moment. But my off season's a lot dedicated to baseball. I've done fantasy baseball for even 10 years longer than I've done football. And that went back to pen and paper, mailing information in and following USA Today, etc. But the off season still does. I still get my football in. It's not as much of a grind as a lot of the guys who do a lot of the whatever Devi and Dynasty, etc. Because I don't watch as much college football. I don't know. Do you watch a lot of college football?
It's hard to find time to. I would love to, and I try to, peek in here and there and stay in tune with some of what's going on, but not like the NFL.
Yeah. Are you a University of Washington fan?
Yeah. I mean, growing up here, it's my home team, so definitely a Husky fan. Crazy to see, their incredible season, and then that national championship game was something, and then the coach leaving. I mean, it's an interesting time for sure.
But yeah, without diving into it like that, my off season isn't as much of a grind. Right before the draft is when it gets a little more hectic because I'm trying to play catch up and follow all the fantastic content creators' information and who they think, and I follow their word, and then I do my own research and back it up. But yeah, it's not as much of a grind and as it is during the season.
Well, good. I mean, you can enjoy. You love baseball, so obviously you can enjoy that season a bit. But fantasy baseball, I mean, that's just a whole nother level. So you've been playing that way back in the day, huh?
Yeah. We started the league I'm in with the longest running league. The baseball league I've got 2 home leagues, one of which has coincided with the football league, same group of guys for the most part. The other one has been since they started that league in 1985, and it supersedes. So there's a gentleman named Charlie Wiegert. Charlie Wiegert is, if you ever want to look up his name and find out, he might have he's the original godfather of fantasy sports. He went to Congress and he basically was defending fantasy sports against the use of their names as a gambling asset. And so he won the case. So, and it's the truth, and it's very shortened to make a point, but without Charlie's efforts, fantasy sports might not exist. And you can go back and ask all the old heads, that know Charlie or that were involved in the game pre all of this, and they'll tell you his involvement is maybe the most paramount decision for fantasy sports as a whole. And so him and I have been in the league now for, gosh, he was in that league in 1985, and I joined when I moved to St. Louis in 2000. And so it's incredible. It's had so many names from like a lot of the St. Louis fan ball guys. There's a site out there called RT Sports. If you're familiar with RT Sports, they host a lot of the main drafts. That's based here out of St. Louis. And so those guys really got their start there. And I've been fortunate to be friends with a lot of them since its infancy. And now we have our site, it's our Patreon called Reliever Recon, where 4 of us have started. And I will say it's a really exciting endeavor. There's more to happen this year in the off season. So I have a lot to look forward to from that, but that carryover, Kevin, I gotta tell you, man, to know when to get into baseball, not neglect football, and then to jump out of baseball and get back into football. It's the worst time of year for me. I hate it.
The struggle is real for sure.
Yep.
I love it. Well, it's been fun watching you rise up in the industry. Is there anybody along the journey that you would say has just been a huge part of your story? Someone that people that have just had a big impact on you?
Yeah, I mean, I will not name anybody before Jorge, just because he's been a mentor when it comes to how to create content positively and in a very fun but yet informative. That's always been his goal. So, and I think he knows that we're peers on this level, but I always lean on him when it comes to maybe a little bit more of the delivery side of some of the content. And he's been, he's become like a brother. Dude's just a great human being. I was sick one day and he Ubered or whatever, some like stuff from Walgreens, some like Pedialyte. And I mean, who does that? Right. That's just people don't do that. And so he's become like family to me and Carrie. Obviously, I think people like yourself and other positive, always smiling, positive affirmations, reignites why I fell in love with fantasy football as a whole, is the idea of the home league that is supposed to be fun, and you're supposed to get everybody together and make fun of the people who pick someone and who wins. When's Rudy going to say this person hasn't been in the league in 2 years, or this person's got, he's on the IL? Those memories, which unfortunately tend to fade a little bit, it's reinvigorated by yourself and, introduction into the fantasy space from a community of people that I follow on Yahoo or Razzball or Sirius Radio. Andy Behrens has become a friend. Carrie and I go out to dinner with him when he comes to St. Louis, and we always meet up at the expo, and, we talk, and I consider him, a friend in this space, which is incredible that a person who I started following it from the very get-go is there. And then having the opportunity to be friends with Howard Bender and Bob Harris and those guys on the radio and make spots there in 2 to 3 years ago, 4 years ago, Kevin, if you said, Nate, you'll have an opportunity to do this, and people, when they listen, will say, oh yeah, I know Nate, or I like what he has to say. That means a lot.
It's awesome. I love it. That's great. Great stuff. Now, do you have any advice for people that want to get more involved in creating content in the space?
What's funny is I just went into this, how, man, it's incredible to meet all these names and everything else. But that's where I think stay humble and don't be intimidated is the 2 best things I give to guys at Fantasy and Frames all the time, when they're like, oh man, Kevin Murray's going to be there. I'm like, and go say hi to him. What does that matter? He doesn't, they want you to come, and we're just into, just friends. I mean, we're just human beings, and you shouldn't feel intimidated, and don't be scared to be you. You know, that you're going to make a mistake 100%. If you don't, then give me your secret, because I found out that's the one thing. My comfort level on doing things like this with you, or radio or written work, is that if I'm wrong, so be it. Who cares? I get over it. As long as my process was positive and I can back up and support why I feel it, other than saying, it's my gut feeling, I just think that's going to happen. Do it. You know, believe in yourself. That's the best advice I can give people.
Great advice, Nate. Anything else that we haven't covered before we close things out here?
I can't think of anything, man. I think you did again, knocked it out of the park.
Hey, it's an honor to have you on here. Tell the listeners where they can find your work.
Sure.
And
yeah. Oh, me to start off is over on the Twitter, X, whatever, is at Nate Marcum. My work is over at fantasyandframes.com. I do have my rankings at Fantasy Pros. Okay, and then, you know, if you're listening and you're actually a fantasy baseball fan, you can find us over at Patreon at Reliever Recon. It is relief pitching exclusively, but for the fantasy baseball enthusiasts that know that saves are one major area of the game, we cover it better than I believe any other content provider in the space right now. And the people will agree, I think, that subscribe. So definitely hit me up. Like I said, it ain't Marcum, but follow Fantasy and Frames more than anything else. fantasyandframes.com, at Fantasy and Frames. It's the best collection of guys I could ever ask for to work hand in hand, and gals. I'm sorry, I keep saying guys, of people. It's the best collection
Everybody.
of people.
I love it. Awesome. Yeah, definitely make sure you're following Nate and the team at Fantasy and Frames. Again, if you love that baseball stuff, hit him up as well, because he's passionate about it all sports. I love it. You're even a Blues fan, right?
I am a Blues fan. Yes, sir.
Nice. Well, thank you again for joining me, my man. I look forward to seeing everything you got ahead of you in 2024, and I can't wait to see you at the Expo, buddy.
Time's counting down, my friend. See you then.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast. Until next time, be sure to follow and subscribe to all of FFU's social media accounts for daily content.